Welcome back everybody, my name is Nick930 and today I wanted to share my first impressions of Assassin's Creed Origins. Now just a disclaimer ahead of time, I've only completed the first act of this game and it's likely my final review could still change. But this is what I've experienced with the game so far and what you can likely expect if you decide to pick it up. Assassin's Creed Origins takes everything we've come to know about the Assassin's franchise and turns it on its head. It's almost more Zelda than it is Assassin's Creed now. Ubisoft took an entire year off of the franchise and have decided to change the game from an action-adventure game with simple controls and a focus on stealth to a full-fledged RPG game complete with leveling up, variable weapon damage, skill trees, and lots of looting. This isn't necessarily a bad thing either. The franchise has been going on now for about 10 years and there's no denying that the formula has been getting stagnant, even with the stellar Assassin's Creed Syndicate that released 2 years ago. Origins is exactly what the franchise needed to bounce back, and overall, it's a great experience. So let's talk about the game's story. Again, I haven't played much so I can't speak at length about this, but if you've played an Assassin's Creed game, then you probably already know what to expect. You play as Bayek, an Egyptian magi that is fueled by a significant tragedy that forces him to seek revenge on those that have wronged him. The storyline is pretty much exactly the same for all the assassins throughout history, with some slight variation in what actually happens, but as usual, you find yourself angry and seeking guidance from friends that walk you around the nearby city and explain all of the game's features. I haven't gotten to the point in the game where I can call myself an actual assassin yet, but considering this storyline takes place before the formation of the Assassin's Creed, I assume it won't happen until the ending anyway. I also haven't seen any sign of the really overly complex and honestly pretty stupid present-day storyline. No sign of Desmond, the Animus, or the Templars so far, but I'm sure it'll show up eventually as it always does. The game's voice acting so far is excellent, and performances are delivered convincingly enough that I have no problems with it. I do wish they had recorded a few more lines for some of the NPCs during missions, especially prisoners, but this is really a minor annoyance and not a deal breaker in any way. Gameplay is where things deviate drastically from the tried and true formula. Since we're now dealing with an RPG, the combat has been drastically changed. Unlike previous games where you only had to parry and instant kill nearby enemies in combat, you now have multiple buttons for things like blocking, dodging, light attacks, and heavy attacks. You also need to lock onto enemies manually, and I found this mechanic a bit frustrating and difficult to get used to. Combat isn't as easy as it was, with enemies capable of absorbing several hits depending on their rank, and you'll definitely need to mess around with different weapon types to see what fits your style. Stealth gameplay remains mostly unchanged, with Bayek capable of hiding in some beautifully rendered tall grass all over the game world and taking down enemies one at a time. Only this time, the game's ranking system plays a bigger role in how this works. Enemies that are a higher rank cannot be taken down with stealth, so you'll need to make sure you rank up high enough before trying to attempt difficult quests. The AI is pretty much the same as always, responding to basic triggers like a player initiating whistling lures or responding to a certain level of detection, and they can be dispatched even in combat without alerting nearby guards, which is pretty refreshing. The game world is absolutely massive and full of life. There's tons of things to see and do in ancient world of Egypt, and for those of you interested in climbing up high structures, don't worry, there's still plenty to climb. You can still climb structures the same way you always do in these games, but Bayek is an even more capable climber, and he can actually climb entire mountain cliffs without a problem. At first I was thrown off by this due to the limitations of all the previous games, but I quickly learned that this game features a similar climbing mechanic to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. You can climb any rock surface at almost any angle, meaning you really are never held back from exploring what you want to explore. I climbed this massive cliff face here to get a viewpoint, and a huge sandstorm came in while I was climbing and it looked pretty cool. You can also swim underwater freely now, another feature never before featured in an Assassin's Creed game, at least not to this extent. The swimming controls feel a little awkward, but they're not as bad as the swimming in The Witcher 3 at least, and the world underwater is just as detailed as it is above the surface. I'm really excited to explore more of Egypt as there seems to be an insane level of detail and in this absolutely gigantic world. AC Origins does not offer any form of multiplayer here, but there is a cool little shared world feature that lets you view photos that other players took with the in-game photo tool, which is cool for players that like to take pictures all day. And finally, let's discuss the game's graphics and performance. Graphically, the game is gorgeous and one of the best looking Assassin's Creed games. The vegetation is probably one of the most impressive features here, and the dynamic weather and time of day looks amazing in this fully realized depiction of ancient Egypt. The performance, unfortunately, isn't perfect. The game seems to run great for the most part, sitting at around 80 FPS on average with all the settings cranked up, but I often run into some stuttering that ruins an otherwise smooth experience. Many users are reporting this issue as well with high-end hardware, and it's difficult to tell if Ubisoft really knows or even cares to fix it, but hopefully it'll be addressed. Aside from that, the game doesn't appear to have any technical issues and looks and plays great. And that's all there really is to say about this game so far. I'll be sure to post a full review when I've completed the main campaign, but just like Shadow of War, this one's going to take me a lot longer than usual, so I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. I hope this video was helpful, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe for more reviews posted every week.